very, very warm welcome to all of you in Radio Land, at home and abroad, on Facebook at YSQFM or at Q95 FM Radio. Share the live. Invite your friends to join the Q family. Get the latest breaking local, regional, and international news and happenings. We acknowledge you on all the other online streaming platforms. This is the Global View on Q. It is Tuesday, the 27th day of December, 2021. We're just about 4 days or so to 2022, just about 4 days away from there. And tonight, my name is Sheridan, Gregoire, Mr. G, and my very, very distinguished guests. I'm delighted to have them here tonight. Ms. Marceline Edwards, who will be joining us shortly, Mrs. Cara Shillingford-Marsh, who's an attorney, and Dr. Simone Mathieu. And I have to tell you, it is a very powerful ladies. And so they will be sharing with us their thoughts on the Nature Island Dominica, the year in review, a conversation. This is part 2 of a 3-part series in a conversation on the year in review on Dominica. I mean, it's certainly important to do this. We've had a remarkable year in Dominica. So I hope every Dominican everywhere had as great a Christmas season as the circumstances permitted. And so we will be touching on a few things tonight. And when you have 3 powerful ladies in the house, you never know what they're going to come up with. But I'm sure that they will look at COVID, the COVID pandemic, what's happening there. Maybe Ms. Cara Shillingford will look at some things to do with the CCD and justice and the whole question of corruption. And the other panelists will talk to us about decision by investment. And some would say a mono passport selling economy. Certainly, the imperative for electoral reform and campaign finance reforms. I expect that we will very likely look at the economic and governance crisis in the homeland. They'll probably tackle the question as to where are we in managing that dreaded COVID-19, that coronavirus and its variants. So here are a few questions. Where is our democracy headed? How did we do in 2021 in terms of that? Is the rule of law still possible, and is it being observed and respected? Can Dominica afford integrity legislation? We had an IPO. Do we still have one? I'm not even sure. We don't hear about it. Is our nature island doomed to becoming a dog-eat-dog society, living on and off each other, or rather than living with each other and loving each other? Is Dominica's fledgling democracy and the rule of law under threat? And our electoral laws been blatantly breached. Where are the promised electoral reforms and campaign finance reforms? Is Dominica disrespecting international diplomatic protocols? And what is the role of our civil society in mitigating these threats? Again, are the revelations contained in the Auditor General's 2019 report justified? Are the frequent capital projects, cost overruns, and constant requests for supplementary appropriations a system of a much deeper problem? Are the objectives and projects contained in our national budgets been accomplished from year to year? Can we do better than we are doing now? So why we keep going back to the Parliament for supplementary appropriations? Then, of course, we see some crimes and violence and apparent disrespect for human life. This appears to be on the rise in our homeland. And most Dominicans enjoy the standard of living and quality of life that is satisfactory, given the vast cash resources that have been generated by the CBI passport program. And what about this notion of resilience and sustainability that we've been hearing so much about, of our natural environment and our architectural heritage? When will we begin to earnestly engage with our local contractors and the expertise of our diaspora brothers and sisters to help solve crime, unemployment, and economic stagnation? Will there be peace, justice, unity, harmony, and well-being of our Afro-Caribbean and Kalinago brothers and sisters before Nature Island turns 50? You know, our 50th anniversary of independence is coming up in 2028. Where will we be then? So please stay tuned. This is the big station. And for this conversation on our Nature Island Dominica, the year in review, of our very, very distinguished all ladies panel. Ms. Marceline Edwards, Mrs. Attorney Cara Shillingford-Marsh, Dr. Simone Mathieu. We will examine the way forward into 2022, but we will look into the rearview mirror in terms of lessons learned in 2021, and even a little bit before that. And we will make some recommendations for going forward. So tonight, as usual, we make recommendations. And like I always say, with no anger, no malice, no personal attacks, no vilification, no divisiveness, just bringing back civility, a caring society, good governance, peace and love among all Kalinago and Africarian brothers and sisters. So wherever you are, in Dominica, in the region, globally, join this conversation on the Global View on Q and have your say as you do every Tuesday, but this is a special night. This is Monday night in our three-part series with me, Mr. G, only on Q95, the big station. Again, before we get into a conversation, let us thank our healthcare providers and frontline workers trying to keep us safe. And let's please follow the protocols and try to stay alive. All right. So later on, we'll be taking your calls, and we're happy that Lambi is on the console to direct your calls, and Sherwin Norris is ensuring that we stay on the air. So I want to just go over to, first of all, to introduce Attorney Cara Shillingford. And why Attorney Cara Shillingford? All of us on this panel here, I believe Dr. Simone, and we've been in a certain business for a while. We've all been married, had a family, and we know that she's just got into the business now. She's sort of the new kid on the beach. So we thought, let's give her an opportunity to take the lead, and maybe she might even tell us how wonderful it is to be in this new arrangement in life. So, Cara, let us go over to you so we can get our little discussion going.
Good evening, Sheridan.
Hi, how are you doing? We're hearing you very well.
Okay, lovely. So firstly, I'd like to start by saying seasoned greetings to all Dominicans. And I'd like to say good evening to all listeners of Q95, in particular my family and friends, my husband, Wayne Marsh, who is listening from New York, my parents, siblings, persons from the community of Salisbury, and persons from all over Dominica. I'm very happy to be here. This is my first time with you, Mr. G, on this program. I listen very often, but this is my first time joining, and I'm hoping that it won't be my last time.
Well, we certainly don't think it will be a last, and I know that many people, many Dominicans and friends of Dominica at home and abroad, have been looking forward to hearing from you for quite a while. So we're not disappointing them tonight.
I hope not. Right. So yes. Well, tonight we hope to look at some of the events which would have happened throughout 2021. I think most persons would agree with me when I say 2021 was a year that can receive mixed reviews. It was a difficult year, obviously, with COVID-19 and the various challenges which we faced in Dominica. But there are some good things that can be highlighted. I don't know if you want me to begin by highlighting some of the things that happened throughout the year.
Well, you can begin wherever you want to.
Okay, sure. So I'll start with the good. In 2021, in the legal profession, we saw the launch of the E-Litigation Portal. That was in August of 2021. Dominica started e-litigation. With e-litigation, we were able to file claims online, file applications like probate applications through the internet on the website of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. So that made things a lot easier for lawyers and litigants. Rather than having to depend on whether the registry was open or not, we are able to sit right in our office and file documents at the court. So the idea is that e-litigation would make things flow smoother at the court. And that the court would eventually, the High Court would eventually become something like a paperless court. So we saw that in August, and that certainly was good news. We also saw in 2020 and 2021 that there were continuous amendments of different legislation, different acts which dealt with COVID-19. I think many persons were perhaps inundated with the number of changes which were happening, and there was a constant anticipation as to what next, what would be the new restriction. So we saw that there were limitations on the number of persons who could gather, attend events. There was a mask mandate which required all persons in public places to wear masks. There were, in fact, a few persons or some people who were arrested and charged with criminal offenses for not wearing masks. There were many persons who were quarantined, and all of these things were quite new to us, meaning prior to 2020, I don't think anyone ever imagined that this is where we would be. We enjoyed certain freedoms, freedom of movement, etc. But because of the pandemic, because of COVID-19, all of these things had to be curtailed. So globally and regionally, we know that different countries are dealing with this COVID-19 situation differently. We've seen in St. Vincent that the government has actually taken a step further in the vaccination mandate, where certain members of the civil service, public servants, are being their employments are being terminated because of their refusal to take the vaccine. Thankfully, in Dominica, that is not the case, and I'm hoping that we would not head down that road. So because of COVID, we've been faced with a very unique situation in terms of how ordinary rights, human rights, constitutional rights can be infringed. Generally, when situations like that arise, while the government or the state would have the right to take certain measures, to protect public health, etc. The idea is that those measures should be proportionate and should be the least intrusive measure. So those are some of the highlights as it relates to things which happened in the legislature and in the judiciary in 2021. There were, of course, quite a few sensational cases which attracted public attention. We had the treating case from the CCJ, the Mahul Choksi situation. There were the election petition cases with the striking out by the High Court, the Court of Appeal decision, and most recently a decision of the CCJ which actually granted leave to appeal to the CCJ. So the matter is still pending before the CCJ. Then we had an interesting case with a funeral home that was embattled with the family members of a deceased person, someone who apparently died from COVID-19, and the funeral home giving them some difficulties to view the body, so the court had to intervene in that case. Then there was the situation also with the bus drivers, related also to COVID, because these persons were complaining that they received absolutely no relief. There was so much money going around, and they did not receive any kind of assistance from the government. And so there was what could be described as some kind of protest, and there were hot matters stemming out of that. So these are some of the things that happened in 2021 that I think we can all remember and learn from.
Well, yes, Cara, and I know that it's likely that you'll probably give us a little bit more, put some meat on some of those issues there as we go along for the evening. And I know that some of our callers will be calling and will be raising questions about some of those issues there. And so we hope that you will be able to give us a
Okay,
bit
so I can see you.
on some
Okay.
of them, yeah. And I see that
Music or
Marceline has joined us
Okay,
now, and I
thanks.
see that Shilwin is still talking to her. So just to let you know that Marceline is on. And so, Marceline, are you hearing us? Yeah, do we hear you? We can see you very well. You can uh, just can you say hello just so we know that you're with us?
Hi, good evening. Good
Excellent.
evening, everybody.
Excellent.
Mr. G and Dr.
Excellent.
Matthew and Miss Cara Shillingford, Miss or Mrs. and
Yes,
Andy. Good evening, a special good evening to you all. I'm sorry I'm late.
that's all
It
right. Some,
was a little trip logging in.
yeah.
So good evening. I guess we are live. So I want to say good evening to the listeners of the Global View. And that's me, yours truly,
Yes,
Marceline Edwards.
we will be coming to you in a while, and I know that you have a lot to talk about tonight. But we just Cara has just done a little bit of an introduction here about some of the issues that she will be looking at, and as we go along this evening. But I just want to go over to Dr. Simone Matthew because Dr. Simone, you've been dealing with issues yourself all along. I mean, in the course of the year, you have a couple of shows that you're doing. You've been dealing with so many people on your different shows that have expertise in so many fields, and they've been opining on so many different things that are taking place in Dominica. Many of them are Dominicans, and many of them are friends of Dominica who are experts. And maybe you have a few things that you would like to, make some observations on as what transpired in the course of the year as you review it. And then I guess later on, after we've all made some initial contributions, we will want to tackle the question of our recommendations going forward to deal with some of those issues and the concerns and the constraints and the challenges that we've seen in our wonderful nature island. So I'm hoping that we will, when we leave here tonight, our listeners will be able to say, yes, they did make some suggestions as to how we can proceed forward for the good, the bad, and the ugly, and even for the dangerous. So, Dr. Simone Matthew, let me go over to you.
Yes, good evening, Mr. G. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, we're hearing you very, very clearly.
Yes, excellent. So good evening to the Q95 listeners, to all our listeners in Dominica, anyone who's listening via the various streaming platforms in the Caribbean, the US, Canada, the UK, and all over the world. As a matter of fact, if it's okay with you, Mr. G, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge everyone who's joining us via Facebook Live. We have quite an audience on Facebook Live, so we want to say a special good evening to folks like Rosita White, Ronnie Royer, Matthew, Louisa Japet, all the way in the UK. So she's up very late with us. Yuslid Royer, Michael Alexis, Justina James, Eliza Lewis. Let's see who else. Julius Corbett is with us. Mr. Ken Williams, good to have you. Viva Mamo, always great to see you. Rosalind Sevre, always great to have you locked in. Beverly Johnson, Anthony Simon, Fifth Sunshine. So we have quite an audience on the Facebook Live already with us, and we encourage everyone to share the live. Let everyone know that we are here this evening as we look at the year in review 2021, and we look ahead to 2022 in terms of what can we expect. But as you mentioned, Mr. G, and I tend to agree with Cara that we can find both good and bad in what we saw in 2021. And for me, I saw a lot of people who just were trying to get by with everything that was available to them with the limited resources due to all the restrictions of COVID-19. So I want to commend our people. I want to commend our people for being strong, for having hope, for not, falling apart during this very difficult time. Because what we are seeing a lot of here in the US is a lot of mental health problems, especially among our younger children. And this is not to say that we don't have similar problems in Dominica, But I just want to take a moment to commend our people, whether at home and abroad, for being incredibly strong during this time period. But I also think what we have noticed is a lot of opportunities missed in Dominica, right? So at a national level, I think what we saw is the missed opportunity to completely pivot into the digital realm. Like Cara just mentioned, now we have e-litigation, which is wonderful. The ability to file a claim without having to physically go to a location is an incredible opportunity for Dominica. But what else? Right? What other national policies are not in place to ensure that business is seamlessly conducted online with all the COVID-19 restrictions? What national policies have been put in place to ensure that our local vendors can now freely sell overseas? Because, Mr. G, I've been on this program with you several times, as well as my program, Roots Connections on Q95. And one of the things I continue to say, because I firmly believe it as true, is that Dominica is not a society of 65,000 people. We're a society of 65,000 people on the ground and 150,000 people in the diaspora. So this is the missed opportunity. And there is still time, because, as long as we have life, we have hope. So there is still time. So how do we take the community in Dominica, the community in the diaspora, and how do we create opportunities, especially financial opportunities? Because I think that we can all agree that one of the areas that most people are hurting right now is the opportunity to be able to earn an income. So that is kind of where I will be leading today. I'm happy to know that we have a lot of political commentators who can do the political commentary on the program. I'm not calling any names, but she's smiling. But that is my focus today. Where can we create those opportunities, put some action into motion? Because I think far too long we've been waiting for the government and waiting for national policies that are not forthcoming. So we have to do the work ourselves. So again, I want to thank you for the invitation to be a part of the program. I hope that everyone had a wonderful Christmas celebration despite the limitations. And I look forward to being able to make a valuable contribution to the program this evening.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for that very brief introduction, Dr. Simone. You've covered quite a bit of ground there. I mean, and matter of fact, some of the topics that I was going to talk to Marceline about as we introduce her, you already began to introduce some of them, because Marceline, one of the things that we need to ask, I mean, are we really managing our COVID properly? I mean, we see that what Cara is saying and what Dr. Simone is saying, are we digitized enough? For example, I'm hearing our entertainers saying, listen, things are bad. Our DJs or musicians are saying things are bad. I mean, couldn't we look to find a creative way to put some money, some of this vast amount of money that's coming out of the CBI passport program? Couldn't we put a couple million in that and help our musicians, our producers, or entertainers, all these people to digitize and sell their product to the world? One or two people are doing that, but not enough people are able to do that. They don't have the capacity. Is that another area of business that we're not exploiting? Because we're talking about small business, but the music and entertainment industry is critical for not only for tourism industry, but also to expand our culture and to sell it to the world. Because all of the local music that we have, our canas and soca and so on, we can sell that to the world. So I'm just raising one or two of those questions. I know you're a lot more competent in those matters than I am, but there is a question of, we've heard so much about the notion of corruption in the year. We've heard that word mentioned so much. We heard the word justice. Cara mentioned about the CCJ and the rulings, and I'm pretty sure she will give us a little bit more information about some of those cases a little later on. But then we hear so much about the CBI program and the vast resources come out of there. And then one of the things I always wonder about is, if we have all of this money, and for the past how many years, why is it that our manufacturing sector is still not off the ground? Why is it that our small businesses are still struggling? Our retailers, our local retailers have gone out, the Chinese stores have taken over. why is it that we're not seeing anything happening in our agribusiness? We're not seeing our agriculture prospering. We're not seeing a lot of exports of agricultural produce and bringing in revenue. We're not seeing anything happening if our water is just running down into the sea. I'm just raising some of those issues because in the course of 2021, I did not see anything happening there, although we are boasting that we have billions of dollars in CBI resources. And then, of course, I just want to remind us that we've been talking for years about the whole question of electoral reform. And every year we seem to be getting more promises. There will be electoral reform. The latest one we had, maybe Cara might help to bring us up to date on what's going on there. I know there's a certain report that we were expecting sometime this year. We don't seem to have got it yet. If we got it, well, nobody has told us that we got it. So we don't know whether it is there. But I'm not even sure that we needed that report, as a matter of fact, because I know there's so many reports we have already from the OAS and from all kinds of people. And then all of our local groups, our civil society got together and they produced a report to this legal luminary, Mr. Justice Dennis Byron. And they said to him, well, this is what we really want here, because we've looked at the Jamaica model, we've looked at the Antigua model, we've looked at the Barbados model, St. Kitts model. Most people think the Jamaica model is great. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we can look at their model of electoral reform and campaign finance reform and probably pattern ours on that. It doesn't take rocket science. But then again, I suppose that he will very likely come up with something sometime. I certainly hope that the whole intent is to ensure in the end that we can have free and fair elections. This is how democracy works. Okay, so I'm just raising some of those issues there. Marceline, so that just to remind you of some of the things that I noticed myself during the course of the year. I'm sure that you're much more observant than I am, and so you have many more that you've observed. But I will mention a few of them more as we go along, as we get the conversation going. Let me just go over to you, Marceline.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sheridan Gregoire, and good evening to you, and of course, my fellow colleagues of honorable women on this panel. A special good evening to you, Dr. Simone Mathieu and Miss Cara Shillingford. I am delighted to be here on this evening's special program, The Global View. And as we look back on Dominica, the year in review, as it stands on its twilight into its exit. So I would like to say a special good evening before I go into, further. A special good evening to all the listeners listening by radio and via Facebook Live. I am glad you all are here and we can have a very good discussion with your support and your comments, whatever. So again, Mr. Gregoire, thank you for inviting me and for recognizing that I do have a democratic voice and the right to elaborate on the issues affecting Dominica and its citizenry, since I, like many diasporans, have a legitimate interest and continue to contribute among the 6% of Dominica's barrel economy. Now, 2021 has been a very interesting year. The pandemic continues to rage with new strains of the coronavirus. We continue to lose loved ones to the dreaded disease. Even with the emergence of various vaccines and a better understanding of the disease in comparison to when it first unfolded in Wuhan, China in 2019. We saw job markets and economies being decimated worldwide with food shortages and the rising cost of living. That is referred to in economics as inflation. But it is important to mention that this pandemic has also presented with it the scope for new opportunities for small business enterprise, new entrepreneurship, new experiences in working for yourself, meaning self-employed, and the comfort of working from home have widely emerged. So that speaks to the fact that out of every negative situation, there is also some positive aspects, or there are some positive aspects that we have to look for in order to develop those ideas and embrace them for our own economic survival, because we were all born with brains and creative minds. I live in a country made up of 52 states with millions of people and job opportunities. So one can decide that they no longer want to be at risk in keeping an office job, nor accept to be mandatorily vaccinated to remain in the establishment of their employment. So every day, thousands of Americans leave those establishments to create their own businesses and their own income by being self-employed. Many have explored that option because the pandemic did not only enhance that vacuous environment for this type of diversification, that the American government knows that these small businesses are absolutely necessary in bouncing back the economy, as they contribute significantly to job growth within the private sector. And not only job growth, but financial independence. So they gave Americans, including us, we the Dominican diasporans who are domiciled in this great nation, they gave us hope through the scope of government support programs, monetary allocations in stimulus packages and grants, which we all must admit have served to cushion the impact of income lost through the mandatory shutdowns, curfews, and isolations brought on by the onset of the pandemic in the last 2 deadly COVID-19 years. Although this nation has severely suffered and still suffering the harsh realities of COVID-19, government businesses still continue to run in a free and fair process of elections, and to the point where we had a change of administration simply because this country's separation of powers are constitutionally intact. As a bona fide Dominican, I wish I could say the same for my naturally beautiful island home that I love and care about so much. But it is rather unfortunate that I can say the same for my motherland, Dominica, that has become a rogue state under this current leader and his enablers. And thus the reason I chose to speak on the subject of democracy, on the constitutional rights. The constitutional rights that limit the power of governments have been circumvented by this administration. And Dominica, I must say, it's sad but true, is no longer a democracy. It's not a democratic state. So in other words, a democratically elected government and individuals acting on behalf of any government have limited power. But in Dominica's case, the one-man government has all the power. Now, this government can acquire people's, well, I wouldn't even say acquire. I am not sure if that is the correct word. But they can seize the private lands of citizens and not compensate those citizens at the fair market value of their land, even if the Constitution says otherwise. So Dominica is operated as a full dictatorship. Now, it seems that the embrace and the, well, I should say it's a type of sadistical embrace, where the insurgence of natural disasters and natural disasters and this pandemic is used to further disable the economic power of Dominicans, where the will of dictatorship can be imposed on the people's democracy. The rights of Dominicans continue to be grossly violated by unconstitutional SROs to keep a certain group of Dominicans under political control, with mandatory lockdowns and without compensation. When Dominica has received, together with the rest of the Caribbean islands, its share of $500,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And on the 24th of August, 2020, which was last year, another $5.2 million from the World Bank to assist Dominicans and small businesses right across the board with stimulus packages and grants in order to lessen the impact of COVID-19 economically, financially, and socially. No, that information is not made up. It is factual. And I did a printout of the information. I did a printout of it. So the information is there. So it's not made up story. I want to ask, in light of all those funds that was pumped into Dominica during the pandemic and throughout the natural disasters like the hurricanes and stuff like that, there's unlimited access to money from the CBI program. I want to ask, why isn't it those millions are used for the benefit of the Dominican people, especially now with the impact of COVID-19, where the economy is, how would I say it? It has been lethargic since before the pandemic. So this COVID-19 is a second type of pandemic from the man-made scary regime pandemic that is in Dominica. And this has really decimated the small businesses in Dominica. Not just the small businesses, but we have seen big companies collapsed under the pressures of pandemic scarcity. The government that passes in Dominica is an economic pandemic. It has destroyed the livelihood of Dominicans and the survival of businesses in Dominica, particularly the indigenous businesses in Dominica. Take, for example, look at what has happened to our hotels, our indigenous hotels in Dominica. Most of them are standing like a fragment of themselves, like skeletons being battered from the hurricane. They have not been rebuilt. And those indigenous hotels, they provided jobs for Dominicans, for local Dominicans who had children to feed, children to send to school, and themselves, their mortgages you know, the everyday to the expenses. But we saw those hotels. Nothing was pumped into those hotels, the recovery of those hotels. But every day, we are hearing of a new hotel being built. We are hearing of a new, well, Dominica is an economy of concrete structures, of health centers that are skeletons. They do not operate like they have a bowel of a functioning medical system within them. So they operate like a shell. We see the hotels coming up as well. And we are asking, what's the capacity of those you know, tourists at those hotels? How can we just plow monies into concrete structures? Doesn't it have the smell, the bad odor, and the resemblance of money laundering, of kickbacks? What? Oh, I don't understand why.
Also, let me just stop you here for a minute, because I suspect you have so much more to go. But we
Yes.
do have Cara here with us, and we do have Dr. Simone with us, and we're hoping to take some calls later on. So we want to make sure before the program ends, we get a lot of ideas coming into play. You've covered a lot of ground already, and I know you have a lot more to cover.
Yes.
But you spoke a lot about the question of constitutional rights and democracy and dictatorships, and you talk about the government imposing its dictatorship on the people and the country, and then crippling many other businesses. These are issues. We've seen businesses that are crumbling. We've seen people's rights being infringed. But who am I to say? I'm not an expert. Cara is the expert on those things. So I'm sure she's going to guide me on those things there to see whether, in fact, we still have a whether we still have a democracy or not, whether we have a dictatorship in Dominica or not. I mean, she's the legal luminary with us here tonight. I'm going to yield to her to explain to me some of those things that we have. Do we have a democracy still, or do we have a dictatorship in Dominica? This is a real question. Is the government, for example, Marceline mentioned about some of the local hotels. I know some of the local hotels got damaged in the storms, and they have not recovered. I imagine that some of them did not have the resources to recover, and that is why they have not yet recovered. But I think Marcin is making the point that there are certain hotels that seem to have a large use of CBI funds and are able to build without having to borrow money, whereas the locals are not getting some of those benefits like some of the other hotels. I know that she's making reference to that. But the question is, and these are some legitimate issues, and I want to discuss them a little bit, Cara. I especially want to look at the whole question of our democracy. Is our democracy under threat? Do we have a crisis of governance in Dominica, as Marceline is intimating? And where do we go from here? Do we see our constitution being breached? I mean, openly, and because she did mention the whole question of the constitution and a one-man government, you know. What are your thoughts on some of those issues in terms of what you've seen over the last year and more, Cara, in Dominica?
Okay, thank you, Sheridan. Yes, you know, Marceline raised very many valid points, very powerful points. And, you know, that got me thinking of some of the things that I see almost on a daily basis as a lawyer practicing in Dominica. She raised the issue of land acquisition, compulsory acquisition of land by the government. And, you know, that is something that perhaps many people do not know about. And I think, you know, the media should probably try to place more attention on it. But we have a situation where many persons, we're talking about scores of people, perhaps hundreds of persons, their properties have been compulsorily acquired by the government under the Land Acquisition Act, meaning that the government has taken their land and failed to compensate them. I know a number of persons from the pond area in Roseau who since 2018, their lands were taken away from them. There's this one individual, she had a business, a building on her property where a business was being operated, and she earned her income from that property. And basically, one day the person's from I think it would be the land survey division, and their agents went into the property, demolished the building, and to this date, she has not been compensated for her land, and that is 3 years, not 1 cent in compensation. So I mean, when things like that happen, it is, I see it's not just as a violation of your constitutional rights, but of your human rights, because people buy property. Firstly, people work hard over a number of years. They save. They sometimes go to a bank or some financial institution to get a mortgage, and they make the necessary sacrifices so that they can purchase a portion of land. The hope might be to build a house there one day, or to utilize the land as part of a business so that they can earn an income, buy their groceries at the end of the day, pay their electricity bill, etc. So property rights are important. When you live in a country where the government can or feel like they can simply take people's properties and just delay the compensation, we're talking about 2 years, 3 years delay, then that's not a good sign. It does not say to me that there's a healthy democracy, because living in a democracy requires that there's sufficient respect for constitutional rights and sufficient protection of constitutional rights. As a lawyer, I see so many of these issues where constitutional rights are clearly being infringed. And the court, the court right now is operating at capacity almost, in terms of the delays and the backlog in the justice system. Another point that Marceline raised, which I just want to reiterate, is the issue of distribution of resources. And what that says to me as a lawyer is whether there is discrimination in the distribution of resources. I think it is, I'm not sure who raised it, but it was said, and I know that to be a fact, that in the US, stimulus packages are given generally across the board. So there's no selection of who should receive this stimulus packages. You decide what is the class of people, the category of people, what factors will be considered in terms of who qualifies, and whoever meets the criteria, that person would receive assistance from the government. But unfortunately, in the country that we live, we have this issue of discrimination in the distribution of resources, and that is a major problem. I think that is one of our downfalls. I remember a few years ago, there was an announcement at, I think that announcement was made at the stadium. It was perhaps some Independence Day address by the Prime Minister, where it was stated that all students who have student loans at the aid bank would receive some assistance from the government. I think there was supposed to be some percentage reduction, maybe 40% reduction in their debt. And I know several persons who have complained to me that they applied, they followed up, and they did not receive that. They did not receive that concession or that benefit. They did not. But there's another group of people who received it. And, these things should not be. At the end of the day, we are all Dominicans. We're all entitled to benefit from the resources of the country. We all pay taxes, we pay VAT, we pay income tax. It should not be that our taxes, our taxpayers' monies are being taken and distributed in a manner that discriminates. Because I mean, these things are just blatant discrimination. And when things like that happen, then people are frustrated, people are oppressed, and people sometimes, they reach their limits. I think that's what we saw in the situation with the bus drivers that I mentioned earlier. The bus drivers who felt so frustrated and oppressed that it seemed so many other people were receiving assistance from the government, and it seemed that so much money was going around the country, and they received nothing. So out of frustration, certain things happened, and we saw some videos on social media which were heart-wrenching in terms of the level of brutality that they were met with by the police. So also there's a situation with first domestic insurance. When you raise the issue of the local hotels which have not been repaired, that immediately brought to mind the first domestic insurance company. It's not just the local hotels, but also hundreds of Dominicans, people whose homes were destroyed by Hurricane Maria in 2017. That's about 4 years ago. People who are victims of accidents, road traffic accidents, who some of them, paralyzed, disabled, etc., and who should be compensated, should receive some kind of assistance from the insurance company, because that is the purpose of insurance. We have a situation with our indigenous insurance company, which for several years has been unable to honor its contractual obligations, has been unable to settle claims. And the question is, why is that so? We have a Ministry of Finance, and we have certain departments, government departments, which are supposed to be supervising insurance companies to ensure that things like that don't happen, that there are sufficient reinsurance policies, securities, etc. But we have the situation of first domestic, and as Dominicans, we need answers. We need, just earlier today, I was randomly thinking about, as Dominicans, we need answers. We need to know what went wrong. Why is this company, insurance company, now, or I think it's under judicial management or in liquidation? Why? Why is this happening? Why are there so many people with homes which have not been repaired? Why are there so many people suffering? So, these are questions that I think it's important to raise, so that as a people, we're aware of these issues, and we can make informed decisions based on these issues.
Yeah, but I know that Marceline has some of the answers to some of the questions that you're raising. You asked why, and a few times you asked why. I know that Marceline has some of the answers. The question is, you're wondering why is it that maybe the insurance company may have got compensated, and the persons who had made the claims did not get their claim settled. I imagine that you may be asking that question as well, because our understanding that insurance company did get a check, but maybe it wasn't enough to compensate everybody. But again, I don't know whether there is any selectiveness going on in terms of compensation, but that's an issue that we hope Marceline can come back and talk to us a little bit about. But I just wanted to add something here before I go over to Dr. Simone, Mathieu. One or two things that you started talking about, Cara, is that the whole question of compulsory acquisition of lands and not paying the compensation. But I mean, doesn't it go beyond that a little bit, really? Because we know that, for example, some of these CBI funds have been used to build some of these housing units. Obviously, none of the CBI funds have been used to help some of the local hotels that have been destroyed and did not get the claim settled from some of the insurance companies where they were insured. But certainly, I mean, if we really value these local people, because some of these hotels, they did a tremendous, they worked very, very hard to get to where they were over many, many years. And I know some of these hotel owners and some of these hotels, these people really did well to get to where they were. And they provided tremendous service, indigenous hotels, right? And I think they deserve assistance. They should all be assisted with the same CBI funds that they're assisting all the other big hotels that are coming up. But one of the things I wanted to just touch a little bit, Cara, as you mentioned, and I want you to see if you can address that. I know that we have a Strata Titles Act, but it appears to me that so many people have been given these housing units there. And up to today, it is a little bit confusing as to why they have not received their title, because we know people who have apartments in Roseau who have had titles under that same Strata Titles Act for many, many years. I'm just a little bit confused and amazed as to why these people who are in these housing units are not receiving their titles. I don't know, maybe you can help us with that. Is there something wrong with the act? Why they're not receiving titles? Who owns the houses?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with the act, because as you said, the act has been utilized over the years. There are apartment houses in Roseau where people have strata titles. So the legislation is there. It is just for it to be utilized. As to why these residents have not been given their strata title, that is a question that I don't think I can answer, because I don't know what is going on in the minds of the relevant authorities or powers that be. What I can say, however, is the effect of not having a title. That is something I can speak to. Having a title gives individuals a certain level of security, a certain peace of mind. With a certificate of title, you're able to access financing from different financial institutions. Whereas, without a certificate of title, you're going to have a great difficulty. So, if any person wants to go into a financial institution for assistance, whether it is because of some medical emergency or to assist their child with educational pursuits, then the bank, the credit union, will ask to see a certificate of title. So in the absence of that, certainly the residents are disadvantaged. The issue as well is the question of whether these people can be asked to leave. Whether one day, depending on what they say or what they do, or whether they upset someone or not, can they be asked to leave? Because I've seen certain instances where things were given to individuals to occupy certain premises, and for whatever reason, one day these individuals were asked to leave. So I see legal issues possibly arising in the absence of strata titles. And that is something that the residents should try as much as possible to push for, to have their title.
Yeah, and Mr. G, if I can jump in real quick, I think just to piggyback on what Cara is saying, we saw recent examples where the person who was supposedly given the property passed away. And in a matter of hours, the other person living in the house, their property was literally removed from the house and they were locked out. Now, as Cara is saying, if you had a title to that property, there is no way that can happen. So I think in terms of security, Dominicans certainly have to be concerned that if you're living in a property and God forbid, the person who the property was awarded to passes away or has a fallout with a certain individual, where is the security in that? And also what we see is titles are important, right? For example, I was able to go to university because somebody had the title to property, which provided collateral for a student loan, right? So without having a title to property, to land, then you're pretty much in limbo. And we also see that as well with the NEP workers, because from what I understand, there is no real security. And Cara, you're on the ground, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no real security if you were able to secure a loan at the bank using your employment in NEP, because technically NEP is an internship program, right? So it's not considered a full employment program. But Mr. G, also, if I might just piggyback for a minute, you asked if there was a crisis of governance. And I think the obvious answer to that question is yes. Because when we look at the examples that Marceline has provided, that Cara has provided in terms of the mismanagement of resources in Dominica, I think we can certainly agree that there is a crisis of governance. And I just wanted to provide two quick examples on that. Here it is, 2 years of no carnival, 2 years of no World Creole Music Festival, wasn't there a line in the budget for those events? What has become of the money in that budget for 2 years of no carnival, 2 years of no World Creole Festival? What has become of that money? Shouldn't that money have gone into creating a virtual entertainment industry, right? Where we have hundreds of thousands of people. For example, I just began collaborating with the Houston Afro-Caribbean Music Festival, where they have 140,000 followers on Facebook. Why wasn't something like that done using the money from Creole Festival, using the money from No Carnival and all the other celebrations we did not have? Why wasn't that money poured into a virtual opportunity so that now we don't have the DJs scraping by, looking for jobs in different stores in Dominica, being completely disrespected, if you ask me, right? So in terms of answering your question about is there a crisis of governance in Dominica? Absolutely, because again, we see the mismanagement of resources where, you know, one set of people are able to seamlessly get through, and yet others have all the restriction placed on them and are not able to accomplish the same as somebody who might be politically affiliated with a certain party.
Wait, Dr. Simone said something. You just one more thing I want to add. You know, she said something which raised even another angle to this issue of security, which I just want to put out there when she spoke about the NEP workers not having that level of security. I think it has to do with policy. Now, over the years, the legal system, the justice system, have developed certain laws. We call it part of the common law. These are generally based on cases, decided cases, you know, from dating back decades, hundreds of years. And there are two basic rules which, you know, this situation or this discussion just immediately bring to my mind. One is that in landlord and tenant cases, or any case related to property, an individual cannot simply be put out of a property and put onto the road. There's a certain security of tenure. Now, if it is that, even a landlord, if a landlord wants to get possession of a property, then the landlord should go to the court for an order of possession. So when we have situations where people are occupying properties and they are fearful that one day they might simply be put out, then what that creates is a certain level of vulnerability and dependency. I say vulnerability because, you know, we have to look at the situation and we have to consider what are the risks involved. You know, we're dealing with human beings. There are people who are good, there are people who are bad. Suppose you have a situation where you have a single mother occupying an apartment with children to feed and nowhere else to go. And, you know, whether she remains there with her children or not is dependent on one person. And I'm just giving a hypothetical. There here to assess, you know, what the possible risk is. You know, is she going to be forever dependent on the decision of one person? If that individual, for example, is someone who is evil and who has some ulterior motive, you know, might he make demands upon her so that if you want to stay in this apartment, then you have to do ABC? We have to get in Dominica to the point where we empower people, where we seek to make persons stronger, give them a certain level of security, and decrease, you know, vulnerability, decrease the risk of people being abused and ill-treated or discriminated against. Similarly, with the NEP situation that Dr. Simone mentioned, in employment law, there have been laws which have been developed over hundreds of years that state that there is something called security of tenure, in the sense that your employer cannot simply wake up one day and decide to end your employment. If it is that your employer wants to end your employment, then the employer must have a cause, a good reason to end the employment. Otherwise, the employer must give you a certain notice period, because the idea is, or there's a recognition that employment is important. And when persons are employed, they make certain decisions based on the fact that they anticipate that their employment will continue. An individual might, for example, go to a bank to get a mortgage, might decide to send their child off to university, etc. So because of that, in order to decrease hardship on the individual, the law says that you cannot simply terminate a person's employment like that. You have to give them sufficient notice to certain categories of persons. And under the Protection of Employment Act, you have to go through a certain procedure of having cause, giving them a warning, etc. So, we have, in Dominica, we have these situations, these instances where the protections which have developed over the years are slowly being eroded, and that needs to stop. I think attention needs to be placed on that. It's not something that is healthy for our people, and it just creates a more dependent population. It's not empowering.
Yes, and before I go over to Marceline, I really wanted to comment on one or two of those things and to raise some of those issues there, because when we hear about all this, the whole question of security of tenure, whether it is talking about in housing, you're going to be there, you're not even sure whether you can leave that to your children if you pass away, like this example that Cara gave, or I think Dr. Simone gave, or the fact that you could be evicted at any time, without notice, because you're not even sure what the situation is. You're not sure what your tenure is. And then, of course, you have some people like in the NEP. I mean, certainly they can't go to anybody to get a loan because they don't really have any tenure in the jobs. Because, I mean, really and truly, it's just a very temporary thing. No financial institution is going to give them an advance based on that job. It's not a real job. Now, here's the thing. So all of this now is creating a certain amount of stress. And we can feel the stress in the society. I mean, the farmers, they're not really having a good time, in the sense that there are no markets for exporting their products that they're working so hard to develop. Our local contractors are complaining that they're not getting jobs. We hear the Building and Contractors Association talking about a lot of no-bid contracts, and they're not embraced at all and not included in that. We hear about Cara recently. We went to the parliament and we created a new procurement act, and I hear the builders and contractors saying, well, this thing is a regression. What we had before was better. I mean, you would be able to tell us a little bit more about that when you've had a chance to look at those acts. But the point I'm making is that it seems to me that almost everywhere you turn, when you look at the artists and the musicians and the entertainers, no real thing was done to help them to digitize. One or two artists were able to do that successfully, but by and large, most of the DJs and the artists and the musicians and performers and producers, they left and they're struggling. And so, as you said very correctly, there had to have been budgets for Carnival, budgets for Creole Music Festival, and for all of those festivities, which were never used. Well, why wasn't that money utilized to digitize, create the platform so those people to be able to make a decent living, right? So, I mean, these are real issues, and obviously it's creating a very stressful situation for them if they don't have a way of making a decent living. These people.
And Mr. G, if I might just add, while we're on that point, I think it is easy to point the fingers at the DJs and the entertainers and say, well, so and so did it. Why can't you? So and so did it. Why didn't you? But that is not the job of the DJs and the entertainers. That is the job of the government. That is the job of a national policy that creates a platform to say, let's take our music, let's take our talent, let's take our entertainers, take it out of Dominica and showcase it to the world. The job of a DJ and entertainer, a singer, is to DJ and entertainer. The job of a DJ of an entertainment is not to create the industry. That is not their job. Their job is to show up, perform, and get paid. And the rest of the production should be coming from somewhere else. So either the government should have paid a production company to do the work, or have their own staff, if they weren't interested in paying a production company, to be able to provide the platform so that these people can come in and do their jobs, and then the rest of the business is done by the experts.
And Marceline, you know, on top of all of that, right? We hear about this thing called stimulus packages. We hear about them in the United States. We hear about them in St. Kitts. We hear about them in St. Lucia, in Barbados, Antigua, all over the place. In fact, the most recent one I heard of is St. Kitts. The government decided, I'm going to pay a double bubble to every single public officer for the month of December or something like that. But I seem to have heard one of us saying on this point that we seem to be very selective in giving assistance, meager assistance, wherever we feel like in some cases. Let us talk a little bit about some of those things in addition to all of the other things that you wanted to raise that you have not yet had a chance to raise yet, Marceline, because it seems to me that when I hear Dr. Simone, Mathieu, and Cara talking about vulnerability and dependency, when we've seen, I think, what looks like a dependency syndrome, is that a deliberate thing, or is that something that is happening because somebody is just, you know, maybe inefficient? What are your thoughts on all of those things, Marceline?
Well, the stimulus and the grants should be given right across the border. It's only in Dominica, I think, that madness where a selective few gets stimulus packages, or I don't know if it's stimulus they call it, but they get packages through the dead hours of the night when Dominicans are under curfew. You have all sorts of vehicles passing around over the country, giving out red bags. It was to a certain few. I don't know how our country became like that, because we used to be a country where we once cared about each other. If a neighbor did not have something and one neighbor had, then that neighbor who did not have, she had as well. Once her neighbor had, she would get. And this is how, you know, in the time I was, you know, I grew up in Dominica, this is how it used to be. I always draw reference to my dear little community, Concord. Concord is a community, it's a unique community. And you know why I said it's unique? It's because we have two parliamentarians. Concord is, you know, well, geographically divided by this large river that runs in the middle of the community. We call it the Gregoire River. You have the indigenous people on one side, and you have, you know, the people from, you know, who vote in the Marigot constituency on the other side. Now, the side where I live is on the Marigot constituency. Now, when we were growing up, these people on the other side, they always voted in the Salibia constituency and we in Marigot. But there was never, politics was never in the heart of the conversation. We did not see our neighbors as labor rights, and they did not see us as anything else. And we were just one little happy community where, you know, we united. But with the emergence of this regime in Dominica, we have become so polarized. We can't even describe ourselves as peaceful and loving Dominicans anymore, because we are greedy, We are selfish. We are too politically wired. And I don't know for what reason we have to see another Dominican as a blue Dominican or a red Dominican or a green Dominican. I have no idea. But this thing about the stimulus, it could have been done in the proper way because all Dominicans are affected. It's not only the red set of people in Dominica who pay taxes. Taxes are paid across the board by red and blue and green. As a matter of fact, if the blue does not pay its taxes, they will come after you like white on rice and demand their taxes. They might even garnish your account. Here in the United States, the stimulus package is not given out in that way. It is based on your taxes. How much taxes you file at the end of the fiscal year. And so they determine as to how much stimulus you get. And you don't have to go, it's not about knowing where your political affiliate office is or what have you. We don't know where the governor's office is. We don't know where the president's office is. And so it is not done like that. And I have seen our sister islands in the Caribbean. They have given their fair stimulus to our neighboring sisters in the Caribbean. And I don't think it was done in that manner. It was done in a way where they gave out the stimulus and the grants because the leaders or the other leaders of the Caribbean understand that they have an economy to grow. They have an economy to keep at a rate where it can sustain the country. They know they need to write checks and there need to be balances. They need to have a solid GDP. They cannot just depend on the country to prostitute its sovereignty by way of peddling its passports, both in the CBI manner and or the diplomatic passports. Based on the CBI, we don't know where those proceeds go. We hear of the missing billions, and those monies are unaccounted for. Can you imagine if those monies were in the coffers of Dominica, in the manner St. Kitts do with their CBI? You can see a government working in St. Kitts with the same CBI program. It's just that you do not have rogues peddling the passports of St. Kitts. The proceeds do not go in all sorts of rogues' pockets, and then they come to whitewash the evils of the CBI. Their evils as to where those monies have disappeared to. They come to fool Dominicans to tell them it has gone somewhere else. When you use the country's resources in that sort of reckless manner, then the country cannot develop. When you do kickbacks, you hire all sorts of foreign companies because you know you can launder money. You know that you can bid a contract. I don't know if you call it bidding, but you can say, well, okay, I did I built this health center for $500,000 when you know for a fact you did not spend $500,000, but the drawdown was $500,000. So this is a way of plundering our country while Dominicans languish. There is no reasons why some Dominicans should get some stimulus and some shouldn't get. There's no reasons why some Dominicans should eat in the dead of night, while some Dominicans are under lockdown and they have only froth, the spittle in their mouth, This is not right. And we have seen the insurance company. Cara made mention of First Domestic. First Domestic Insurance Company. I held that company very dear to my heart because I was there when this company was born. I was an agent with Life of Barbados, and I was also contracted with First Domestic to sell property insurance. So this insurance company was the first and only indigenous company on island. And whatever happened is clearly proved that whatever reinsurance they had, it was not sufficient to cover that type of catastrophe that happened when Hurricane Maria took place. But you would want to think, because we have so much largesse of CBI money, that people can just build hotels. There are people who can get paid. There are people who got paid, who got compensated from insurance companies for hotels. And they took those monies. They never paid those debts. And those debts were still made, they still vanished under some loopholes. Those are people who do not have legitimate interest in Dominica. Those are the same people that want to tell us how good the CBI program is and how much of a godsend it is. Yes, indeed, it is a godsend because it made them millionaires. It made them millionaires while it brought majority of Dominicans poorer. And those are the reasons why we cannot see any form of economic development in Dominica. Because when there is corruption, then there cannot be any form of economic development. And this is what happens when a country is beset with corruption. There is poverty, there is decadence, there is mendicancy, and nothing happens. We have a hospital that is just a structure of a hospital. Once you check in, you check in by your head, but you check out by your 2 feet. And this is what you call the hospital, the main hospital we have in Dominica. No wonder when the people who tell us how good the hospital is, no wonder when they get sick, they ship out of there. They don't have their kids there because in the last few months, our babies are dying in that hospital. And no one is talking about it since the last year when the report came out, when they said that we have one of the highest infant mortality rates. It stopped for a little while, but it is back up over the past 2 months, 2 to 3 months. You know how many babies were buried in Dominica? Over 10 babies were buried in Dominica by the funeral homes. And I ask, what is killing our babies in that China Friendship Hospital? Why is it that our babies cannot thrive? Is it, and I'm asking questions, is it that there is something to get rid of our indigenous Dominicans? Because if the babies are dying, then our population is controlled. Our babies are dying. The elderly is dying out. Now you have coronavirus in all sorts, in all fashion. Once you go, you check in the Corona Center, most times you check out. So when I look back on MO News and I look at the funerals, it hurts my heart to see so many young people dying in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, and in their 50s. People are not dying 80, 90 something years anymore. It's only young people dying. What is killing our young people like that? Is it our healthcare system? Is it that our healthcare system has gone that bad that, there's no diagnostic testing in Dominica? There is no healthcare in Dominica. There's no at the health centers where people could go check themselves in the communities, then what is happening? What is happening to that type of level of healthcare we once had as a people when we were first in the Caribbean, when people from all over the globe would come to Dominica, in the Caribbean, would come to Dominica to have their surgeries? What is really happening to our people? Is it that they don't have money? They don't have sufficient money, so they cannot go get those physicals done to arrest any situation, underlying situation, before it takes them over? I don't know what is happening, but from what I can see, the controlled form of our resources, it simply states that if you keep Dominicans poor, if you take away the livelihood and the economic power, you will be able to control them. And that is dictatorship. Dominica is a thriving dictatorship. We do not have democracy in Dominica.
Just thank you for that contribution there, and Marceline. And now I wanted to two things I wanted to do. Really, three things really. But first thing I want to do is alert Lambi that we have to take some calls from our listeners. I know there's people who really want to join in the conversation. And I know, Simone, that you have a whole lot of people who are on Facebook that are making comments, and I would hope that you can acknowledge some of them again, and some of the comments that they're making. They're very, very interested and excited in what we're doing here tonight. I'm getting a lot of comments. They told me this is the most powerful panel you've ever had. You must always bring more women on your show. That's what I've been getting from these folks out there. I don't know if it's Cara just because of a new status. I don't know what is going on, but I mean, people seem to be just, enamored with what is happening here tonight. So Lambi, we will need to take some calls. So I'm going to give you a moment to give our listeners the numbers so that they can have an opportunity to call in. But Cara, when we come back on the other side of the break, I wanted to put a question to that somebody asked. Somebody said, ask Cara to comment on the dispensation of justice in the country. And a whole question of people expressing their fundamental right under the Constitution to protect and express their views on matters. And the whole question of the police high-handed approach on the citizens. So somebody wanted you to see if you could comment on some of that. I think particularly the police high-handed approach, and I think that is what they're saying. And you did speak about the bus driver situation and some other situations. We do know that there have been a couple of people who have died in police custody over the last, not too distant, not a distant past. Lambi, let's take a few calls and give the people the numbers. Let's hear them, and then we'll come right back.
Thanks. This is the Global View and Q. The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Let me run those numbers one more time. 449-309-596 and 97, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. And we're taking your calls whenever you're ready.
Well, if you don't have any calls, I really want to ask Dr. Simone. So as you get the calls, you interrupt us. And I want to ask Dr. Simone to acknowledge some of our folks who are there out there on Facebook. Dr. Simone?
Yes, absolutely. So we have quite an audience, and they've been having a very engaging conversation on the Facebook Live. So we thank them for being here this evening. We have, let's see where I left off. So Anthony Simon, Faith Sunshine, Rosemary Isles is watching from New Jersey. Tina Bell, the Ramon, always great to see you. Owen Prosper says compliments of the season. Colson Shillingford, good evening. David Joseph, always great to see you. Notice Isidore, good evening. Bernadette and Annette Phillip. Let's get some of the comments as well. Louisa Japere, just like to say Happy New Year to my brother Joseph in Goodwill. So some greetings going on. Bernadette Wilkinson, exactly. The dictatorship boasting continuously about money, yet a lot of things is not off the ground, sadly. So as I make the comments, just make a note if there are any of the comments that you would like to comment on when we come back to the panel. So some really good comments are coming in. Kahina says, my favorite lawyer, Mrs. Cara Shillingford. So compliments to Cara's coming in. Let's see, let's take some comments, and I'm keeping my eye on Lambi to see if we have any calls coming in. Veronica Pascal, good program. Thank you, Veronica. Leslie, when last have you been to Dominica, and how often have you visited? I think that was a question for you, Marceline. So let's see. Rosalind Sebre, maybe we could have the representatives of those insurance companies come in for an interview to explain. So some suggestions. Linda Eugene Dubik, my sister, a building, and they said help young people to start to build and so forth. So I think she's making a comment about trying to engage young people. Marian Powell, the apartments belong to the government. I think the only way to get a title is for the government to subsidize a loan for the people. And with that, we'll go back to Lambi for the calls.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, Lambi. And good evening to the panel, and good evening to Mr. G also. And good evening to Marceline, good evening to Dr. Mathieu, and good evening to Dr. Simone.
Good evening.
And what I want to say tonight is that my question is directed to Cara Shillingford. Ms. Shillingford, my question tonight I would like to ask is that I'm always hearing the Prime Minister talking about you have a one-party state. As a lawyer, can you tell me, Dominica have a constitution? Can any Prime Minister put carry Dominica into a one-party state with the constitution we have? That's my first question. My second question is that, again, the Prime Minister is telling me, as a citizen of Dominica, that I don't need opposition. And I know when I read the Dominica Constitution, the opposition is part of the Constitution. So who should I believe? I would like your comments on this, please, tonight. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Great questions. You want to take any other calls before we go to get some answers? Otherwise, let's roll. Cara, maybe you might want to just, deal with that. And there was this other one that I did raise with you. I don't know whether you took a note of it before. The question about the question of the dispensation of justice and the whole question of people expressing the fundamental rights to express, under the Constitution, the freedom of expression and the whatever protection that they have seems to be eroded by the high-handed approach of the police. And of course, we do know of a couple of people who have been brutalized, and then people who have actually died in police custody. So maybe you might want to comment on some of that as you answer those a couple of questions from that caller.
Okay, thank you, Mr. G, and thank you to the callers who posed the questions. So I'll start with the last question first, and then I'll go on to the first one. So the caller raised issues concerning democracy and whether, I think the question is whether there can be a one-party state in a democracy. My answer to that would be no. In order to have a healthy democracy, then you need an opposition. The people, the electors, the voters should be able to make a decision to choose from one party, one government and another. And necessarily, I mean, if you're going to be able to make a choice, then you cannot just have, there cannot simply be one party. So I think a healthy democracy requires that there be at least more than one political parties. And as the caller raised, yes, the Constitution recognizes that there must be a leader of the opposition. And there are certain appointments, certain boards, like, for example, on the Public Service Commission, Police Service Commission, etc. Certain appointments, the Electoral Commission, certain appointments involve the leader of the opposition. So having an opposition is very important for a healthy democracy. With that said, I would also like to just tie that into the first question. We have to look very closely as to how the opposition is dealt with. You know, an opposition cannot simply be an opposition on paper. You know, do we live in a country where there appears to be a persistent move or a habit, a practice of attacking persons who are members of the opposition? We have instances over the past years where we see many opposition supporters, members of the opposition, like Mr. Lugay, Mr. Linton, Mr. Hector John. You know, these people have been dragged before the court and charged with criminal offenses based on things that they would have said, their utterances on political platforms. We have persons being charged with offenses like incitement. I think there was this one instance where a supporter of the opposition was charged with inciting someone to burn down parliament or something like that. So we have all of these very ridiculous charges where rhetoric, things which are said on political platforms, when said, depending on who make those statements, you know, they are treated and dealt with as criminal offenses. Whereas on the other side, when certain people make statements on political platforms, you know, whether about Al-Qaeda or, you know, these kind of statements, which are very similar and sometimes even worse, you know, they get away with it scot-free. Nobody charges them, nobody calls them in for questioning and so on. And that brings us back to the issue of discrimination. You know, how are we treating our people? Are we treating them as equals, or is it that the laws of Dominica apply only to one set of people, and the other set of people they can do whatever it is that they want? Is it that a stricter set of rules, a different set of laws apply to support the opposition? Is it that these people are not entitled to freedom of expression, freedom of political opinion, of conscience, etc.? And the answer should be no. The answer should be that all Dominicans are equal, that no one should be singled out for worse treatment. The caller also raised the issue of police brutality. And as you rightly said, Mr. G, we have had in Dominica instances where persons have died in police custody. We also had in my community, Salisbury, an instance where on the day before the election, while people, including elderly people in their 90s, 95, 96-year-olds, were in their beds sleeping, they were bombarded with tear gas. You know, so there seems to be a pattern where members of the police force are being used to brutalize Dominicans based not on whether, you know, it is that they committed a crime and they're being arrested according to the law and brought before court, but based on what clearly appears to be some ulterior motive. I'm not saying that, you know, all members of the police fall within that category, because there are a number of very good, hardworking police officers who recognize that they are out there to protect and serve, you know, to uphold justice. But there is a group of police officers who just allow themselves to be manipulated and used. I mean, we had, I don't want to get too much into it, but we had, you know, the Mahul Choksi situation. And I mean, we're all aware of this, the allegations which were made. So, you know, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to the justice system, law enforcement, and there's a lot of room for improvement. That is one of the things that I would like to see happen in 2022 and beyond. I would like to see a justice system which treats persons equally, a system where there is no backlog of cases, where we have, you know, more than one civil judge who can deal with the backlog, where cases don't have to take 5, 6, 7 years before a court. I would like to see that in as our New Year's resolution in 2022 and beyond.
And yes, and while we keep an eye on Lambi in case he wants to take a call, I mean, let me just go over to you, Simone, because part of what we're talking about is this whole question of a one-party state. I think that's a very bad idea. I don't think we should ever contemplate having a one-party state in Dominica. I think it's good to have choices. Good to have a couple of solid political parties that people have a choice. I mean, if one party is playing the fool, take them out and put the other one. When the other ones start playing the fool, take it out and put it there. That is why I am a firm believer in electoral reform and campaign finance reform. And I believe that we have examples in the region that we can emulate very, very easily. It's no need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, Jamaica has done a great job. It's all the turmoil they have in the elections. They don't have that anymore. And so we need to get this done. And I believe that we need to get this done in 2022. There's no reason why we should go beyond. When we come to the meeting of Parliament for the budget, we should have had our electoral reform and the legislation should be in place before that. We've been talking about this thing for many, many years, but yet we have one party spending millions and millions, and then the other party has nothing. And people are able to bring people in to vote, and you have all these allegations of bribery and treating. And then we go to Parliament and try to pass a law to legitimize the bribery and treating. Of course, I mean, these things, we really cannot entertain those things in a democracy. What we ought to do is to try to create a level playing field so that we have free and fair elections. How do we do that? We have to do that by ensuring that we change the laws so that people, this residency thing has to be clearly determined. I mean, it is there already. Residency, you have to be a resident. You have to satisfy that requirement for you to be able to vote. So why are we behaving as though we don't know that that is there? Why don't we fix it so that there is no ambiguity in the law, so that we know that it's a very clear thing? It's no point thinking, hey, that person came in and they say they came in yesterday and they say their name is so and so, you just let them vote and they go about it. That cannot be right. I mean, we have to have a better system than that in this day and age. It is the 21st century. And I do not think that we should go into 2022 or any other election after that, where we saw what happened in the Granby by-election, right? So if we can go into another election where first of all, the Electoral Commission, and I want to get your comment on that as well, Cara, because we have so many of our institutions that I think that are getting eroded, like the IPO, like the Electoral Commission. Why does the Electoral Commission have to have just, what is it, 5 people, 2 from one political party, 2 from the other one, another one that the Prime Minister recommended the President and they put there, and so on. And why does it have to be that? Why can't we have 9? And why can't we have 1 from each political party, if any at all, from any political party, and have professionals in there? Why should the political parties be there? They could have 1 each, yes. But why can't the private sector, like the lawyers, and the different interest groups and civil society be represented? There are many experts in there that do a great job in there. It doesn't have to be in one way that the chairman is going to just work in favor of one side or the other. It seems to me, if we're really serious about this, we need to look at that and reorganize that Electoral Commission. And I think Electoral Commission should say, listen, you know something, we're going to eliminate this one-sided business. And if the budget is going to be $5 million for the election campaign, that money is going to be spent in 3 months. We fix the date for the election, right? Fix the date for the election. I believe in 2-term limits for any one political party, one prime minister. I believe in term limits, right? But I mean, fix the date for election. This business of having an election date in your back pocket and you're not telling anybody and you keep it, that is nonsense. Make our country look like it's a joke. Fix the date for the election. And within the 3 months prior, the Electoral Commission says, okay, we have these 2 legitimate, political parties of 3, whatever. We are allocating this amount of money from that budget to each of them on a certain basis to be determined. They have to spend that money within that time frame. And they can accept other money, but they cannot accept any kind of big money from some donors that you don't know how to pronounce their name. You don't know where the money is coming from. You don't know what influence they will have on your government if you win. Eliminate that. So fix the amount that people can give to the party outside of what the Electoral Commission officially would grant to each party. But then again, there has to be accountability and transparency so that you have to account for everything you got and everything you spent, how you spent it. You have to account for it. If you receive money from outside of that, you should account for it. But then here's what we're hearing. And that's why I'm making this point, because it's so important for us as a democracy. If we want to build our economy and do all the other great things, we have to stabilize our political system. We have to stabilize our democracy, right? So we should not be worried about that. We should be focused then on our economy and helping our people to develop wealth and to get growth. And to forget about this nonsense where GDP is looking so like St. Kitts 10 times better than us, and this other one 10 times better than us, so everything is going down. That is not really where we should be in Dominica in 2022. We should fix those things, put those things behind us so then we can focus on building wealth for our people. Focus on eliminating poverty, creating the jobs, creating the agribusiness, adding value to our natural resources so that we can build wealth, create jobs, create foreign earnings by getting exports. We should be able to tell our farmers, listen, these are 20 products that we're going to do, and we're going to buy every one of them from you. Once you produce them, the quality is good, you can deliver on time, and this is the price. We're buying all that because we're going to use that. Not only are we going to get export markets for you, but we're going to use a certain percentage of that as throughput for agri-processing. So you create product that has shelf life that you can export to the world, and the world takes it, and you can bring in foreign exchange into the country. We should be able to say, listen, let's take a lot of that CBI money, let's put it into water. Let's build a couple of water bottling plants. Let's go into bulk water and sell water to the world. What is wrong with that? We just put in all of it into hotels, and not even hotels, some hotels, not even all the hotels getting. Nothing is happening in manufacturing. Nothing is happening in agribusiness. We have a whole set of young people out there. We tell them, we pass a little legislation in the parliament, and we tell them, okay, we're going to legalize 2.3 grams of marijuana for you to smoke. Instead of going in there and creating a policy environment where you can really take this thing and plan this thing in a massive way and allow processing of this thing, whether it's cold compress or hot compress, processing and extract the oils, and say to the pharmacists in the world, listen, we have this product, this great product. We know all the pharmacists there, the big pharmacists are buying this product. If you go on their website, you'll see it. They're selling these products are based on marijuana and cannabis oils. Very expensive. This is where we could get a lot of value. This is what should be the fashionable thing that young people should do, not smoking a spliff. They should be out there getting wealthy from just producing and extracting these oils and let it get exported and add value right there. We don't need to just export the oils, we should really have the oils down there, create the factories, process them, add value, make product, and then sell the product. So we create the jobs. This is the kind of thing I think we should be focused on. I mean, in terms of recommendations going forward in 2022, I believe this is what we should be. We really ought not to be still haranguing about whether, we should have campaign finance reform and this kind of thing, and how much money this one should spend, and where this money person get the money is not our business, and so on. That is nonsense. I mean, really, we're better than that. So we have to now show that we're better. Here's what I think. I think Dominicans should make a resolve that, by the middle of 2022, we should get this electoral reform and campaign finance reform thing behind us. Take the model from Jamaica. Ask a couple of good lawyers to put it together, do the adaptation, and let's take it to Parliament and fix that. We don't really have to wait. Of course, Dennis Byron, a good man, he's had all his money already. So he has to do his job, send a report. But I mean, we have reports already that we can use. We didn't really need that other report from him. If it ever comes, we don't need it really, because we do have other reports already. Hopefully his report might be a good one that might reflect some of what our local people have been presenting themselves, hopefully, because these are the wishes of the people. So I'm just making all those statements to say, Dr. Simone, that, it is really time that we stop engaging our thought process with things that we should have done 20 years ago. I mean, when I hear people are talking about, hey, we have all this money from CBI, We would love to see manufacturing, we'd love to see tourism, we'd love to see agribusiness. But what happened over the last 20? If we love to see it, why didn't we do it over the last 20 years?
Yeah, and I'm happy that you're bringing up all these points, Mr. G, and I'm really happy that we have Cara on the platform, because the question that comes to mind is what else can be done? I'm so in agreement with you that all of this, the electoral reform, should be done, you know, put a bow on it, wrap it up, and let's move on to economic development. But I'm just curious if, you know, and also I was very happy to hear Lofty yesterday when he said that this is going to be one of the pillars of his program for next year. Because I think what we oftentimes see in Dominica is an effort to frustrate the process, right? So by frustrating everything that everyone is trying to do, the intention is that you will forget about the idea. You will completely walk away from the idea because you've tried everything. You've tried the legal process, you've tried talking about it, you've tried protesting about it, and now you're frustrated. So guess what? You're going to drop the topic and you're going to move on. So I want to say congratulations to Lofty. Was listening to his program yesterday and was very happy to hear that that is going to be one of the fundamental aspects of his program for 2022. So I just wanted to ask Cara if she had any thoughts. You know, everything that has already been said and done, we've seen it been done in Jamaica and some of the other islands in terms of electoral reform. Do you have any ideas in terms of what else can be done to move this process forward?
There's so many things that need to be done to move the process forward. As Mr. G said, you have to look at the constitution of the Electoral Commission. You know, why is it that these are persons who appear to be strictly political appointees? Obviously, if someone, or if, you know, the majority of the people who sit on the commission are appointed by the government of the day, then there is a risk, there's a real risk that those persons might have some allegiance to the government of the day. And, you know, that is problematic because the whole purpose of the electoral process is to determine whether that government stays in office or gets out of office. Now, unfortunately, we have heard these issues concerning electoral reform, I think for the past maybe 3 elections or so, or maybe even more. And after the 2019 elections, very soon after, we were promised that Sir Byron, very, very prominent, very well-respected jurist, will embark on this process and will provide the government with certain recommendations. Now, I have seen, or I did a quick search on the internet in terms of what is the current status of this, and I came across an article where, you know, the Sun reported that DBS reported that there was some delay, etc. And I'm wondering what is the reason for this delay. I think that Dominicans should really hear directly from Sir Byron as to what exactly is the issue. You know, what are the difficulties that he may be facing. Because I am very concerned that right now 2 years have passed since the election, the last election, and you know we have 3 more years until the next election is due, or less than 3 years. So electoral reform isn't simply a matter of going to Parliament and passing a bill. That's not it. The legislation, the act, has to be implemented. If it is that the recommendation is that people have to be re-registered, then we would need sufficient time to do that. You know, so I'm concerned about the passage of time, and I think that all Dominicans should be concerned. And I'm very happy to hear from you, Dr. Simone, that Loftus, you know, intends to pay attention to this issue because, you know, it is something that is vital to our democracy. There's a great need for electoral reform. I do not believe that the electoral process is sufficiently strong or sufficiently safe so that the will of the people can be reflected. And you know that's an issue that directly affects democracy. So those are my thoughts on electoral reform.
Yes, and also I believe that I believe that Marceline will also be involved in Loftus's program on that. But also, I'm aware that Ken Vital has also been elected as chair of NJAM. And my understanding from him, what he's saying, is that they intend to make electoral reform one their main focus to ensure that they have it done in some. I think it's good to hear that Dominicans are really focused on ensuring to get this electoral reform thing behind, because I really believe that there's too many people who have too much poverty in Dominica. I mean, we don't have enough growth. I mean, we're not really adding value to our natural resources. We're not protecting the natural resources that we have. As we said, we have all this thing about resilience and sustainability, the most resilient or the first resilient country in the world or whatever it is. Thing is that we have to translate that into some kind of action that is going to improve people's lives. And as I can see there now, when I listen to the cries of the bus owners and operators, the heavy equipment owners and operators, the people who are working in construction, all of these people in tourism, in agriculture, in agribusiness, and all these young people who have so many good ideas that could be translated into real action that could create jobs and employment and foreign earnings. I am not seeing anything happening there. And that is the point. Why are we spending so much time just pretending as if we're doing electoral reform when everybody else has done it? It takes 3-4 months to do it, and we're taking how many years to do that? And at the same time, our economy is it's regressing. I mean, tomorrow night when we'll have a chat on the final, the third part of this 3-part series on looking at Dominica in the rearview mirror and then making recommended going. I'm going to have Dr. Thompson Fontaine with us, and Dr. Living and Dr. Dion George, and I'm also going to have Dr. Swinburne Augustine with us. And we will really hope to make some very strong recommendations going forward, because you see, I find we're really playing the fool in Dominica, man. I mean, when I think about the other islands and how quickly our own Justin Simon was involved with the electoral reform in Antigua, it took about 3 months. Jamaica did theirs, Barbados did theirs, St. Kitts so quickly. Why are we taking so many years? We keep pretending as if and keep telling the people that this is so difficult. We want to go all over the world and re-register people in New York and wherever it is. I don't know why we have to do all of that. I mean, just do what the others have done and finish it up and then put this thing behind us. I kind of am a little bit lost, and I keep putting it this way to understand why is it that we still go into the parliament every time we go for the budget and we say we're going, okay, so $1 billion is approved and so much for this project, and then 6 months later we're coming back for another $300 million supplementary appropriations, and we're saying, look, this project has been an overrun. That Margaret Hospital was supposed to have been what, 30 million, is now 60 million. How does that happen?
Kickbacks.
I mean, I don't get it. So why is it that we cannot, and there's no bidding on this thing? So if there's no bidding, you don't even have something to compare with. It really is not making sense for us to keep doing that. I mean, while we're doing that, we're seeing the other islands moving ahead of us. We're seeing that, the democracy is solid. Look at what's happening in Barbados, in St. Kitts. So we need to do better than that. From 2022, I think we need to really ask ourselves a question. Get this electoral reform thing done, and let us start focusing on our economy. Let us start putting the young people first, right? And help them to because they need the jobs. This NEP thing really cannot work. Why don't we do a real apprenticeship program? I mean, something real, put some real money so people can learn some real skills, get paid something, just like they have the cooperative programs in some of the schools in North America. You do this and then you get these jobs, and these people might keep you because you might be so good at it that they might just keep you working there. You learn some real skills are transferred. Why can't we do that instead of people just cutting grass by the side of the road primarily? That's not making sense. That's not what we're developing our young people. Which parent wants to raise their children just to cut grass by the side of the road? We have to stop that nonsense. That's not working. Marceline, I don't know if you have any thoughts on some of those things.
Yes, I do. I definitely have. One of the persons, Leslie, I think, asked when last I was in Dominica. Well, Leslie, this is my passport here, and I will show you when last I was in Dominica to satisfy your curiosity. You see the number of times I've been to Dominica? Look here. I was there last in 2018. I spent 3 weeks in Dominica. So maybe you can have a look at it. So that puts your curiosity to rest, I hope. Now, on the subject of electoral reform, I would like to ask a question. How are we going to get rid of the treating and bribing in our elections? Because Dominica does not have free and fair elections, since one of the fundamental things to ensure free and fair election is the removal of bribery. Our electoral process is completely hijacked of the democratic process. This has been eviscerated from, all our institutions and provisions of a constitution. And that is where the people decide who governs the country. It's through free and fair elections. We have not been able to materialize that because we see so much of treating and so much of bribing, which has become the norm. In the just concluded Grand Bay so-called election, we saw blatant bribery, it was open market, open season for bribery. And what did our police do? Nothing about it. So when all our institutions are compromised, like you have the judiciary, which functions like part of the Labour Party. It's a part of the Labour Party office. And this goes all the way to the appeals court. We have seen the nulli processing of the treating and bribing case. And this is at the center of the extent where the democratic process of our country has been compromised. Where I can say that Dominica is not a democratic state. It is not a democratic state at all. Look at the police. The Police Act gives the police a duty as another institution to function outside of politics and to investigate crimes. We have seen a situation where the home of the opposition leader, who is more or less an official constitution functionary person, where he's constitution functionary person, where he holds the government accountable. The position of the opposition is to hold the government accountable, to ensure that that checks and balances are in order. And we have seen the home of the opposition leader compromised, and his safety, and there was no police investigation. And I find that to be very, very odd in a small place like Dominica, where we believe that we still are a democracy. We have another key pillar of our democracy, where it is also in danger. The media. And I must touch on the media tonight, because it is supposed to play a fundamental role in guarding our democracy. We do not have any investigative journalists in Dominica. All we have in Dominica are reporters. The media house will take propaganda from government information service. Now, the government information service is not supposed to be a propaganda machine, but unfortunately, in Dominica's situation, it is. And when they put out the information there, government information puts out the information wholesale, it is being rebroadcasted wholesale. No investigation, no proof of worthy news, no analysis, nothing. So even the media houses and media personnel are compromised. They operate in the same fashion like Fox News. They are about their money and their popularity. It's not about bringing authentic news to Dominican people. Where is the media association that was formed recently to uphold the pillars of democracy? Where is the balance? Now we are hearing about the other side, which, in my view, there are 5 sides in media in Dominica. You have Q95 radio, you have Cara FM, you have GIS service, you have DBS radio, and you also have Vibes radio. Now, 4 of those sides are geared towards one side, the government. Now, the other side wants to take away the one side, which seems geared to the total, which, this makes the media, it makes it look like the media is geared towards a total emasculation. So there are no journalists in Dominica, no real journalists in Dominica. Real journalists calls for press conferences and ask the hard questions to uncover the truth, to bring accurate information to the masses. We have seen what inaccurate information has done through the bans of Fox News. We have seen what happened on January 6th in America, right here in Dominica, where our democracy almost crumbled. Had it not been for the separation of powers, we would have a perfect example of what goes on in Dominica, where the stealing of the elections are done systematically to impose a one-man quasi-dictator on Dominica, who have not worked for the Dominican people. He has only worked for himself because he knows that he is not committed to Dominican people. He has no obligations to the Dominican people because he knows he's not he's not elected by the votes and ballots of the Dominican people. He knows he is elected by constantly, systematically stealing, rigging the elections in Dominica. And that is why we do not get no form of development in Dominica. We have this here from the Democratic Party. And it says, if we don't vote, they will decide for us. It says, stop Trump, Republicans. But this, I want to change it around. And it says, if we do not get electoral reform, they will decide for us. The rogue regime in Dominica will decide for us. And it will be more of Roosevelt Skerritt, more of Vince Henderson, more of Reginald Austri, more of all the purchased ministers in Dominica who they don't worth the salt. Because look at where Dominica has gone. Dominica has fallen in the abyss. Dominica has not seen success in many, many years. And it's not because of the pandemic. It's because of bad governance. It's because of ignorance. The people are being so ignorant in Dominica that the media is to blame for what is happening in Dominica, because the media does not bring any form of authentic news to Dominica. They are censored. They bring what they want to the Dominican people. I always go back to the expose of Al Jazeera News when it was dissected. Whatever Al Jazeera News brought, it was dissected and cut and sliced. You never heard of the 90% that was stolen on the other radio stations by the hyenas of Dominica, where they only give, the greedy hyenas of Dominica, where they only give Dominicans 10%. You never heard that on DBS radio. You never heard it on Kyrie. You never heard it on GIS. You never heard it elsewhere. But you only heard a doctored version, an insert as to 3 minutes on Lennox Linton, and about where they turn it to mean that Lennox Linton was trying to sell diplomatic passports, when they know for a fact that they had not been telling the truth. And if they had allowed the full airing of the tape that was aired, or the news item that was aired by Al Jazeera News, Dominican people would have gotten the truth to that aspect of the news, to whatever Al Jazeera communicated. They would have gotten the full sense of it. But they doctored it and they sliced it in the same manner GIS bring propaganda that is smeared all over Dominica by the so-called reporters in Dominica. We don't have journalists and the radio stations that are totally emasculated and compromised.
Well,
And
thank you for that, Marceline. Thanks a lot for that. Now, let me just put your mind at rest. This business that we have called Q95, it is not going to be compromised. All ideas going to contend always. We believe in democracy, and everybody has a right to speak on Q95. And we will maintain it. I remember when we first got off the ground, we offered the Labour Party, we offered the UWP and the Freedom Party an opportunity to have a program. The Freedom Party took it up, the UWP took it up, the Labour Party did not. That was their choice. They would have been on Q95 at the same time as the UWP and the Freedom, but they chose not, they chose to go elsewhere, so that's fine. So anybody who wants to do a program, once we can accommodate it, we will accommodate it. Now, here's the thing. We are not going to allow anybody, and that I can give you an assurance about that. And we have shown that over the years. Nobody's going to come and put any ideas into Q95 that we are not going to be able to contest independently. I mean, whatever is done there, if you listen to Q95, the variety of programs that we have, we question everything that we have to question, we bring everything that we have to bring. We may not be able to always do everything that everybody would like done, but we do our best to do that, and we intend to continue doing that. And that is why we want to ensure that all ideas will contend, and that our listeners, they have to be the watchdogs of our democracy. They must be able to call and question things, and they have to be given the opportunity always to call and question and raise issues and look for answers and demand answers. That is what we're there for. We're not there to censor anybody or to prevent anybody from talking, okay? So I just want to give you an assurance of that. I wish more people would be doing that in Dominica, but we will always give everybody a chance to speak. All ideas must always contend. We will never do like the others and say, I'm not going to allow this one or that one to say anything here. We're never going to do that. All ideas must contend. Now, because we have a little time problem there, you know, because you can see the time already. It's already what? We're going.
Oh. I thought I still had a few more minutes, like
Well,
2
no,
minutes.
hold on. You know, you have a few more, but so does Cara, and so does also, you know, we have 3 people on the panel here. And so we have to do, but remember, we still have, it's now already a 10:15, right? So we have to start winding down because some of us are not as young as you, Marceline, right? So we have to get a little sleep, right?
Why are you picking on me, Mr. Gregoire?
Because everybody tell me you look so young, and you know, when you talk you sound so strong, man. You
Really?
that's what everybody's saying. But here's the
Oh.
thing: we need to start winding down. And Marceline, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with you so that you can just complete what you started talking about, and then I'll give a couple of minutes to just wind down here now.
Okay. My last point I want to make is about the parliament, where laws are made, where a speaker is supposed, the laws are made, and a speaker is supposed to chair the proceedings of parliament in a fair process. According to the law under the Constitution, the parliamentary representatives are supposed to choose the speaker in parliament. But this speaker we have here now, Mr. Joseph Isaac, he was announced and appointed the Speaker of the House in the Windsor Park, and as well as other cabinet appointments. So this is another clear example of the contempt for the Constitution and clear dictatorial actions. And these are the things that affect Dominica grossly, that if we do not look at those issues as serious issues, then we will not be able to recognize what Dominica used to be, because Dominica used to be a place where we had very little in material sense, but we had the dignity of good moral values and independence through hard and honest work. This regime has shown Dominicans how to plunder, scheme, and not account for their assets that cannot be matched to their legitimate income. We were a place where our leaders had the attributes of integrity and brought a high order of decorum to the nobility of that office, since they respected and abided by the constitution of the land. And the constitution that governed those offices and protected the rights of the Dominican people. What can we say now? These people do not have any form of interest in the Dominican people. There used to be paramount importance, or people used to be of paramount importance and foremost in the minds of our leaders since they respected and upheld the Constitution. But that has changed over the past 20 years. And right now, our Dominican people, they do not even know if they still have rights as free citizens, because Dominica is no longer a democracy. We are a full-fledged dictatorship. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Marceline. Appreciate that. Dr. Simone Mathieu, you know, as we're winding down here, I'm pretty sure that you have a few comments just like Marceline that you would like to put in there before you wind down.
Yes, well, before we do, Mr. G, while I have the floor, we want to just really acknowledge everyone on Facebook, and we want to thank them. There's been quite a lot of discussion going on between folks on Facebook, and we want to thank them for respecting each other despite having differences of opinion. So, you know, it's wonderful that we get to have this conversation, and then a group of people on Facebook also get to have an important conversation and exchange of ideas as well. So good evening to Gabriel LeBlanc, Teresa Durand, Marley Ostry, Peter Xavier. Thank you for being here, and thank you for engaging in such great discussion. Bernard Arlene, good night to all. So thank you for being here. But yes, so Mr. G, I think just as important as looking back on 2021, we also have to say, what's next? What comes in 2022? And I think for me, where do we go from here means what actions are we prepared to take in 2022 to move forward? So as we can see from our discussion this evening, we have so many battles to fight on so many different fronts. So it is great to see that we have Dominicans who are prepared to step up to the plate to fight these important battles. But on my end, I am thinking economic opportunities for Dominica. So what actions can we take to ensure that Dominicans become financially independent? Because I think what we're seeing is that dependency that we've been talking about all evening is what is creating the dictatorship that we've been talking about. Because where people are vulnerable, where people are dependent, people are not independent to make decisions, right? So maybe if we spend some of our energy focusing on financial opportunities for Dominicans, then we can move the compass in the direction of independence, where people feel that they are more equipped to make independent decisions politically. Right. So for me, again, it's about, you know, creating financial opportunities. And that is what the focus will be moving ahead in 2022 in terms of Push Past 10, in terms of Roots Connections on Q. And again, Mr. G, thank you for the opportunity for that platform where we can bring the experts together in Dominica and overseas. And we can say, well, what is the plan? What plan can we come up with? How can we, you know, get everybody together? And many times the action may not necessarily be something where you have to go knock on doors. It can be something as simple as sharing a Facebook Live. It can be something as simple as sharing a YouTube link where we go live and we're promoting somebody's product, we're promoting somebody's book. It could be something as simple as teaching us about the digital economy, because let's face it, all these financial opportunities that we are talking about cannot be possible if we're not ready to embrace the change in terms of how money is spent, in terms of digital financing, in terms of, you know, using your online banking and PayPal and Cash App. So all that is an educational process. Right. And I found it so interesting because last night on your program, Marcus, who I was happy to put a face to the name, he talked about the Commerce Department, where this is a department in the US that goes out and secures business for U.S. companies. Do we have that in Dominica? Not that I'm aware of. So we have to create our own commerce departments where we can bring people together, we can source information, we can collaborate on ideas. And not everybody's going to be interested, right? Some people are going to be happy to stand on the sideline and not participate. But for those who are willing to participate, I encourage you to send me an email, pushpast10@gmail.com, pushpast, the number 10 @gmail.com, and let us know what are your ideas. And I'm so excited because already we're getting ideas of what can be done in terms of mentoring young people. There's so many young people in Dominica that have no hope for the future. They don't see, a bigger picture for their life. So in terms of mentorship, in terms of opportunities, in terms of businesses, I had a conversation with Annette Sanford, and we had this incredible discussion on how she has been able to create an agricultural sector in the Kalinago territory and collaborate with, buyers in Martinique. So it can be done. So I think I want to leave us tonight with a message of hope, a message that we can do this together despite not having national policies to guide our efforts. With 140,000 visitors and an audience, we have the audience, we have the skills, we have the technology. What are we prepared to do to ensure that we can bring financial opportunities to Dominicans, to give them that independence, to reduce the dependency that is causing a lot of the problems in Dominica, and to make Dominica a more independent nation. So again, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I'm always happy to come by to talk about opportunities to move Dominica ahead, but I'm very interested in what are the actions we can take to get the job done. So it was a pleasure to meet you, Marceline and Cara, and I hope we can keep in touch because I think we've started some great conversations this evening, and I want to be able to continue them. So again, Mr. G, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, yes, and thank you for being there and making the contributions that you're making, Simone, because here, I mean, what you're saying is so fundamental. Where we need to head to is to really for people to develop and grow and make wealth, create wealth for people so that they can have a better quality of life and improve standard of living. And the way to do that is by creating your economy, build some structures of your economy, solidify them based on your natural assets, your natural endowments, and natural resources, including the human resources, because we saw countries like Singapore, what they've done, basically based on the strength of the human resources. People have got wealthy. So I'm saying that is a great way. We have to look forward to 2022 and beyond. But in order to get there, we're saying that one or two things have to also happen in 2022 if 2022 is going to be a platform for we to launch the launching pad for us to move our economy. People like Marceline and Loftus and Ken Vital and NJAM. I believe Loftus is also a part of NJAM. I think he's the public relations officer of NJAM. You are talking about action. We look forward to see what action they're contemplating, or whatever action they contemplate to help us to get electoral reform. We hope that all institutions in Dominica that contributed towards the report that went to the Electoral Commission with the recommendations for electoral reform, we hope that all those organizations, all those agencies will come together, all the unions and everybody, private sector, will support these actions in order to ensure that we get electoral reform and campaign finance reform in 2022. That's the only way you're going to get it if the people decide they really want it. Because, politicians respond to people. Why? Because they depend on people's votes. If the people who are going to vote for you and to provide support for you are telling you, we must have this, and they go, that's what happened in 1979. Everybody decided we want to make a change, and they made a change. So the people stood up, all sectors got together, there was a cooperation, and everybody stood together and they got changed. I mean, can you imagine in 1979, the union decided we wanted 141% increase in pay, and then they got 121% increase in salary. Whereas today we're talking about 0 and 1 and 1%. And I'm not even hearing anybody complaining about that. While we're getting double bubbles in kits and, in salaries. So the point I'm making is that, yes, I agree with you, Simone, and what we need to live with at the end of 2021 is that we wanted to move into action to develop our economy, to develop wealth for our people, eliminate all that poverty and mendicancy that we have down there, and this dependency and the vulnerability that it creates. So if we can do that, let us all together decide, okay, whatever big stone that's in the road, let's see what we can do to shift it aside. And the way you do that, your electoral reform, and so when everybody come together, let's support this. No more, tear gassing of Salisbury people while they're sleeping. No more police brutality and young people trying to just, express their rights under the Constitution and they get arrested and charged frivolously. And so, I mean, we should end that, put that behind us and work again as one people, as we did before in our Kudme style, to build our economy, build our people, build our sectors, build our growth based on our natural and human resources. So, Cara, I want to give you the final word. We started with you, we'll end with you, your final comments and then your wrap ups.
Thank you, Sheridan. I just want to say it was a pleasure being here on this panel, this very distinguished panel. And I'm happy to have met Dr. Simone and Austin Edwards virtually. And I do hope that we can continue having similar conversations. Generally, reflecting on 2021, I am extremely grateful to be alive. I'm extremely grateful to have my family and friends around me. There are many persons who have gone through great losses, a lot of pain and tragedy in 2021. And I just urge these people to try to be strong and, let's try to be our brother's keeper. Let us bring back a sense of humanity and, stop being divided. There is a lot of potential for division. Recently, we see it with vaccinated persons and unvaccinated persons. Sometimes we allow political opinions to divide us, etc. I want us as Dominicans to remember that at the end of the day, we are all human beings together. We are all Dominicans, and to focus on the things that bring us together rather than the things that divide us. I believe that once there is life, there's hope, and that we should take the opportunity to learn from the past, learn from past mistakes, and to forge forward building a stronger future. I pray that God would grant us as Dominicans the wisdom, the discernment, spirit of discernment, integrity that we need in order to make Dominica a better place, to create a better future for our children, our grandchildren, ourselves. So I think that we have tremendous potential in this country, and I would like to see Dominicans working together in 2022 to kind of rescue Dominica and to make it stronger and better than before. Thank you once more, Mr. G, for inviting me. Thank you to all the listeners, those persons who are on Facebook. I was not able to access the Facebook page, although I tried, but I will. I am, grateful for the level of participation we've had.
Yes, and Cara, thank you a lot for being there. I mean, one of the things I recall clearly, sometime maybe months ago, I don't remember, it was about a year ago, and then Cara came off and there was this case, the CCJ, and some people were trying to take some of the credit for it. And obviously, Cara deserved the full credit for the results of that case. But then many people came out and said, Cara, are you going to run for public office? And she said, well, I'm not going to say yes or no, but I'm not going to write it off. If I know anything about that family, there's a gentleman, I'm not going to call his name, is Cara's father, very outspoken man, and we know that politics runs in his vein. He very outstanding gentleman. So he believes in justice, he believes in the Constitution, and I think Cara learned a lot of those things from him. She had all those values from him, very strong. What I want to say tonight as we leave is that I think we need to stop this divisiveness, and let us just, unite as a people, as we did in the past. I mean, let our constitution unite us. Now let's focus on making sure that we follow our constitution, not allow people who, the people who founded the constitution, they had good intention, but they never envisaged that you might have rogues and vagabonds, like in many countries that might, get into office and then might decide to just disregard the constitution. I am a little bit disappointed in the sense that I would like to see an amendment to the constitution, Cara, in the sense that it is not the right thing to have the legislature controlling. You have to have the cabinet controlling the legislature. You have three independent branches. How can you have a cabinet made up of what, 18 people, and then you have 20 something people so in the parliament, and so whatever decision is taken in cabinet, the ayes have it in the parliament. I mean, that cannot be the right thing. I would like to see a separate chamber, a separate legislature, a senate or something like that. So you have a cabinet. When the prime minister goes, he takes his cabinet with him. The other one can bring their own cabinet and they take the decision, but you have the legislation making the laws and you have the judiciary doing what they have to do. So it's independent, a lot of independence there. So we probably would not have all these problems with the speaker doing this and doing that. It change everything. We no longer discuss complaints. So here's my thought. Let us follow our constitution. Let that document unite us as a people, right? And then let us decide, something, the most important thing for us is for human development, for everybody. Let's lift people out of poverty. Whether you're UWP or labor or freedom or whatever you are, we should just want to lift everybody out of 70,000 people we're talking about, I mean, Simone, that's not even a small stadium. So 70,000 people, you can transform that thing in overnight and, and have everybody making a living and not having to be begging and waiting on handouts and so on and being afraid to speak. Let us make people independent. Let us grow wealth and let us develop an economy. Let's not just chase away our institutions and our big investments like Ross and so on. Why allow them to live what we have them already? Let's add more. Let's build on that, not lose what we have already. And so, whereas we used to be exporting so much in bananas and other non-banana agriculture products, let's get back to that again. Let's focus on those things again. Let's get back to our manufacturing days. We used to have candle industries and those agro products and all those other things. So many factories we had. I mean, you remember Leo Emanuel, bless his heart. This man formed this dumb fruit thing. Many years ago he did that. He had canned orange juice in Dominica. This man had a factory canning canned orange juice in Dominica. And we don't have anything like that now. We had a Coca-Cola, we don't have it again. We had a water bottling plant. What happened to it? Kubuli beer. What happened to them? Everything has gone.
All gone south.
Gone. So we need to bring that back. So that's why I'm saying our focus, no matter what political affiliation we have, we should let that be our focus, to lift our economy, lift our country, lift our people, and then we'll be all right. Let's put the little things behind us. Let's do what people have already done. Let's not make it look like it's rocket science to do electoral reform and a campaign finance reform. Do like Antigua and Jamaica and them. Get it done, then let us start talking about our economy. That is the note I would like to leave us on tonight. I certainly hope, as Cara and Simone have said, we will see some action towards these things there rather than be fighting each other all over the place. So I want to thank Dr. Simone, Mathieu, and yourself, Cara, and Mrs. Edwards.
Thank you.
For all of the fine contributions that you made tonight. I want to thank all the people who listen us on Facebook and wherever you are, whatever side, it doesn't matter what your thoughts are. People have to have independent thoughts. Your thoughts are okay. Your argument is okay. Whatever you do, you say, this is your thought, say it, right? But the point is participate. That's the whole idea. And the other thing is that we have a lot of callers who are not able to, for some reason, we couldn't get through to them, but the conversation sometimes, we get carried away. We don't take all the calls. Let's not blame Lambie for that. Lambie did a great job and Sherwin did a great job keeping us on the air. And so I want to thank all of you and thank everybody listening to us, wherever you are in your neck of the woods, wherever you are in China, Australia, wherever you are in Switzerland. Thank you for tuning into us and be with us tomorrow night for the final part in our three-part series on the global view on Q. We're looking at Dominica in the rearview mirror. You say, let us do a review of Dominica over the last year and before that. And let us make some strong recommendations as we make into tonight, going forward in 2022 and beyond. So hopefully you'll join us tomorrow night with Dr. Erwin Andre and Dr. Thompson Fountain, Dr. Swinburne Augustine, and Dr. Dion George. And we look forward to being with you again tomorrow night from about 7:30 Dominica time. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, and thank you.
Cara and Marceline and Simone and Lambi.
Thank you. Good night.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
all.
Lambi. Good
See
night.
you again.
Good
Let's
night,
stay in
Cara.
touch.
Good night, Simone.
All right. Good
Okay.
night.
Good night, Mr. G. And good night, listeners.
Yes, yes. Let's stay in touch, everybody.
Yes.